Well, a very good evening to everyone. It's a real pleasure to welcome you here to the Blavatnik School of Government and specifically to tonight's event. So for those I haven't met, my name is Tom Simpson. I'm the Alfred Landecker Professor of Values and Public Policy here at the Blavatnik School. And over the last 12 months or so, I've been hosting a series of events which have been very generously funded by the Open Society Foundations, which I'd just like to publicly acknowledge my gratitude and our gratitude to them for enabling this series of events on the theme of learning from the right, and specifically thinking about what is the contribution that the political right, broadly construed, can make to the future of democracy. And part of this is a real desire to learn from international perspectives. So one of the features of the political right is that it's heterogeneous, it's diverse, there's contestation and debate within it, and it's been an ambition for me to bring some of that into public discussion and scholarly discussion, and it's been a real pleasure to be able to do so. So as the last event, as part of this series, it's just a real pleasure for me to welcome Michał Łuczewski. He will forgive me because he's such a generous person for my massacring of his name. Apologies for that, Michał. Please do correct me. And Michał, it's just a real pleasure to welcome him. He's a sociologist, a psychologist, a Polish public intellectual. And one of my ambitions, again, has been to think about current intellectual trends which are having an impact on politics and on policy. And really looking forward to the perspective that he brings from continental Europe. He served on the National Development Council in the President's Office of the Republic of Poland and on the Prime Minister's COVID-19 Council, among many other distinctions. And I was recently in Heidelberg in Germany for an event, giving a talk, and before the event got going, we had some chamber music from a pianist and a violinist. And I said to them afterwards over drinks, this is just raising the bar. I mean, this is cultural experience combined with scholarly achievement. And they looked at me like I was some Philistine, like everyone does this. Why don't you do it? And I feel like that with Michał as well. So Michał, not only is he an academic, he's also a poet. And so last time we were together in a conference in Poland, in September, we were sharing our mutual love of the English poet A.E. Housman. And then the following day, what had he done? He just translated Housman into Polish, one of his poems. So very distinguished. So just in terms of our format, for those who are in the room, just to welcome those who are online as well, so that everyone's aware of this. This has been live broadcast at the same time. If you don't want to appear on the live broadcast, don't ask a question afterwards. So Michał will talk to us for a period, and then we'll sit down, we'll have some initial discussion, I'll ask a few follow-up questions, and then we'll open the floor to follow-up questions, and we'll finish no later than 6:15 tonight. And just to say, with apologies to those online, you can't join us unless you really make an effort to get to Oxford quickly. But for those who are here, there's then drinks outside, which you're more than welcome to stay and continue the conversation over drinks for that. So without further ado, let me hand over to Professor Michał Łuczewski. Thank you, Michał.
Thanks so much for the generous introduction. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jennifer, for organizing everything. Thanks also to the generous Open Society Institute and Blavatnik School of Government. It's wonderful to be back here. Let me start with experience, because when we want to describe conservatism, it is always bound with experience. And I was in Oxford in March 2022, and I went running in Christchurch Meadow. And I was surrounded, in Gerald Manley's Hopkins words, by rural scene, sweet rural scene. And in his poem, Binsey Poplars, Hopkins writes that rural scene was shattered by axes. That beautiful trees were just cut down, or all felled. And my scene was shattered by something different. It was shattered by that feeling that I'm here running in that rural scene, emerged, surrounded by beauty, And my friends in Ukraine, my friends in Poland are shattered by soldiers, by airplanes, by drones, by attacking armies. So that was my surreal feeling that how can I run here when the world is shattered down there. And my friend Michał, who was a spiritual leader of fight for independence of Ukraine, he was also preparing the talk for our series in Harris Manchester College. And he gave the title to the talk, Farewell to a Son, a meditation on death, sacrifice, and eternal life. So I knew already that he was to give witness to the pain of a father who lost his son in war and tried to understand it as a theologian, as a spiritual father to many people in Ukraine, but he wanted this time to understand his own experience. And another friend, also Greek Catholic priest, whose family we hosted in Poland, he checked out how they were, and then he added, "We just had a surprising snowstorm when spring almost entirely took over our streets. Lukashenko wants to join Putin to attack Ukraine, although some negotiations are planned in a few hours between Ukraine and Belarus. And Putin ordered nuclear weapons to be set ready. But the love of God is not turning away from us. There was already a story of Goliath and David, and it didn't turn well for Goliath. Thank you for your words of support and prayers. Today in our church we read Matthew 25. All our efforts now are focused on helping those in need. Our judgment day may be soon, so now is the time for feeding the hungry, giving shelter to refugees, visiting those in the hospital, and donate blood, among other things. May God's mercy on that judgment day be larger than his justice." So when I was running, I was thinking about not fallen trees, but fallen cities, fallen countries, fallen soldiers and civilians. All are felt, not spared, not one. And I couldn't distance myself from that experience. I couldn't follow what Child of Europe did, described by great Polish poet Czesław Miłosz. Just after the war, he wrote a poem, Child of Europe, describing what we should do being faced with atrocities. And his formula was, love no country, countries soon disappear. Love no city, cities are soon rubble. Do not love people, people soon perish. Or they are wronged and call for your help. Do not gaze into the pools of the past, their corroded surface will mirror a face different from the one you expected. And I didn't feel, as a child of Europe who wants to distance myself from my fellows, I love those countries, I love those cities, I love those people. And I wanted to gaze the pulse of the past. So I was a Central Eastern European child. And since conservatism is born from that kind of experience, I would also like to give justice to that experience first. And what I am about to do, I will try not only to speak on conservatism, but also to speak in a conservative way. And what does it mean? I'm taking that insight from Michael Oakeshott, who famously showed that there are four types, four modes for voices, four modes of conduct. Practice and politics, history, science, and poetry. And poetry is about being present, in Oakeshott's view, about being for what's there. And conservatism, also in Oakeshott's view, is about being also present, fully present to what's there. It's about delight in what is here and now. It's a preference for the familiar over the unknown. It's the preference for the convenient over the perfect. It's about the importance of present laughter over utopian bliss. It's about attention rather than aspiration. It's about, in Charles Taylor's words, cosmic connections rather than mechanical parts. It's about, in McGilchrist's vision, right hemisphere, which allows us to be, rather than left hemisphere, which allows us to use. So conservatism is, for me, like the ethic of presence, and the articulation of that ethic, of that attitude, is also to be found in poetry, not only in science, not only in history, not only in politics, although I will touch upon all of them. So I hope it will be, in my talk, there will be a conversation of mankind inscribed. So you'll hear all those voices, not only the voice of politics or not only the voice of science. Of science. So let us start. Within half an hour, I will guide you through geopolitical context of Central Eastern Europe. I will talk a little bit about the invention of Eastern Europe, because this is a construction, about Polish exceptionalism, uses of Central Eastern Europe, and I want to draw some lessons, maybe 3 lessons. But it will also be a tribute to one of my mentors, I can say, David Martin, a great British sociologist, but also theologian, who tried to, while describing reality, he tried to use different registers, not only sociology, but also theology. And first metaphor that comes to mind to me when I'm thinking about that part of the world is bloodlands. I remember Timothy Snyder when we were together in Vienna Institute for Human Sciences. We were much younger than today, and Timothy wanted to write the book on brotherlands. He wanted to write a book on brothers who choose different nations. But then I saw that something is attracting him, and that book spiraled into bloodlands. So he wanted to pay tribute to brotherhood, but what he saw is actually blood. Blood of those territories between West and East, Germany and Russia, the US, one could say, and China. So this is the place where those great empires meet, those great blocs meet. And technically speaking, one can describe Central Eastern Europe as an interface periphery. It's not periphery that is attached to a center, but it's a periphery between 2 centers, between 2 powers. And we have Prussia or German Empire on the one hand, and Russia on the other hand, and they are struggling for Central Eastern Europe. And as a consequence, it is not only an arena of conflict between empires till now, but it's also of object of imperial desire, but also a scapegoat with ideologies created to justify this role. And we've seen it with Putin, how he tries to justify why that territory belongs to him, why he can do with that territory whatever he wants. And that territory is plagued by 3 archetypes: betrayal by the West, and when there are now peace talks, I think that everybody in Ukraine is thinking about it. Will there be a betrayal? Will there a second Munich? Will there be Yalta? So there's that deep fear that we will be left. But there's also a deeper fear of being betrayed by our own elites, who also orient themselves to stronger centers that are around us. So one of those betrayals in Polish history was a very important one. So Polish nobility, before partitions of Poland, they paid tribute to the Empress of Russia, because they wanted supposedly to save Poland, but to save Poland they betrayed Poland, and they also lost Poland. And this is also a story that is a story of Hungary or of Czechoslovakia. Those people who wanted to save their country, sometimes they betrayed their country. So there's also the deep-seated fear of it. But there's also the third archetype of imminent destruction. So everything can be lost. Everything can be lost. And think of Gulag, think of Holocaust. For Czechs, the stories of the White Mountain, where they lost their nation and they became Germanized. For Poles, this is the Swedish deluge, where the state was shattered. So this is that interface periphery between two empires who are imitating one another in their desire to possess that part of the world, and hence that peculiar experience of that part of the world. And let me refer here to describe that experience once again to poetry, to Zbigniew Herbert, who was one of the most eminent Polish poets. He shares the same name as George Herbert, your great British poet of Welsh origins, religious poet of Welsh origins. And he took pride in the fact that his surname comes from Scotland. In 1983, he wrote a poem called Report from the Besieged City. And you will see all those archetypes in play in that story. Too old to carry arms and fight like the others, they graciously gave me the inferior role of chronicler. I record, I don't know for whom, the history of the siege. I'm supposed to be exact, but I don't know when the invasion began. 200 years ago, in December, in September, perhaps yesterday at dawn. All of this is monotonous. I know it can't move anyone. I avoid any commentary. I keep a tight hold on my emotions. I write about the facts. Only they, it seems, are appreciated in foreign markets. Yet, with a certain pride, I would like to inform the world that thanks to the war, we have raised a new species of children. Our children don't like fairy tales. They play at killing. Awake and asleep, they dream of soup of bread and bones, just like dogs and cats. And so, in the evening, released from facts, I can think about distant ancient matters. For example, our friends beyond the sea. I know they sincerely sympathize. They send us flour, lard, sacks of comfort, and good advice. They don't even know their fathers betrayed us, our former allies at the time of the second apocalypse. Their sons are blameless. They deserve our gratitude. Therefore, we are grateful. They have not experienced a siege as long as eternity. Those struck by misfortune are always alone. And I took that poem to Ukraine during the second Maidan. I wanted to share that poem, and I remember when I read that line, those struck by misfortune are always alone, and the line that people are sending you good pieces of advice, they knew because they experienced it by themselves. So it was not a poem from the past that was experienced, they actually lived through. And Herbert was born in Lviv. He was born in that very city. And although he was Polish, that experience was very resonant. That description was very resonant with the experience of my Ukrainian friends. So those struck by misfortune are always alone. And this is a profound description of being a scapegoat. That you are alone, struck by misfortune, there's nobody to help you. Or maybe you are afraid that everything will be lost. So once again, that space is a space of interface periphery. And when you are in that scapegoat position, you understand much about reality that is around you. So I'm also interested in understanding organizations. And if you want to understand your organization or your family, the very good way to do it is just to see who is the scapegoat. Also of you, who's your scapegoat. Maybe you are a scapegoat, because from that very point you understand actually what's going on in the whole system. But the problem is that nobody wants to listen to scapegoats, and therefore there's a whole ideology that is silencing that kind of experience. This is a classical book by Larry Wolff, The Map of Civilization of the Mind of the Enlightenment, inventing Eastern Europe. And he's showing how great intellectuals like Voltaire, together with politicians like Frederick II of Prussia and Catherine the Great, they presented Central Eastern Europe, or Eastern Europe in that case, as a place of civilizing mission for the West. So West defined itself at the cost of Eastern Europe, to distance itself from the Eastern Europe, and also with civilizing mission. So, for example, Frederick the Great, so the Prussian emperor, he defined ethnicities there. He specifically thought of Poles, that these are the Indians of Europe, yeah? the Iroquois of Europe. So so there's also ideology that doesn't allow us to articulate actually the experience because you are not seen as somebody who has something to share importantly about the system in which we are. So one example, this is, you might know John Gray, a great British philosopher. In the 80s, he was interested in Polish transformation and also in that part of the world. And he wrote a paper called Western Marxism, a Fictionalist Deconstruction, where he described and reviewed the book, The Word as Deed, Studies in the Labor Theory of Meaning. It was published in Helsinki by Helsinki Praxis Press. The editors are Olsen and Kahn. And it was a collection of essays by Revaj, who supposedly was a great Hungarian philosopher. Ferenc, you cannot know that philosopher because he did not exist. So he came up with the whole philosophy of Revaj, who supposedly influenced Ludwig Wittgenstein. And the theory was that our words are as labor, as deeds. And I think that some people might took that hook and believed that Revaj existed. But at the same time, in another article by John Gray, he wanted to describe a Polish philosopher, Bronisław Łagowski, who was in the background. And Bronisław Łagowski was the member of the Communist Party, so Polish United Workers' Party. But at the same time, he was a great admirer of Margaret Thatcher and Friedrich Hayek. And he wanted to publish, some paragraphs about that interesting figure, but the editors didn't believe that such a person could have existed. So I want to take a lesson from John Gray that you can believe fictions about Central Eastern Europe and do not believe the truth about Central Eastern Europe. And this is because of the position of Central Eastern Europe between East and West. So let me now jump from that global perspective to internal perspective so that you understand also that intricacies of Central Eastern Europe. Because we have, for historical reasons, weak political and economic capital, because there were no states, there were empires in the 19th century, culture becomes the binding foundation of unity, and hence poetry. Hence poetry, because poetry gives us that principle of unity. It is the way how we can communicate. It's not the money that makes the world go around. It's not politics. It's culture. So culture here is very important. In more technical terms, we can say that cultural capital is the most important one. And what does it mean? That there is a moral capital. It is important to build your own story, your own kind of morality that shows that you are still surviving, that your values, though being challenged, are still worth fighting for. Very important is intellectual capital. So the importance of education, the importance of academia, the importance of books, and also artistic capital, the importance of great artists who are building nation rather than great entrepreneurs or great politicians. But because weakness on geopolitical level, and because of lack of economic and political capitals, also within elites in Central Eastern Europe, you will see rivalry for those capitals. And that rivalry is between, on the one hand, people who are Western-oriented, who I'm here referring to that crucial Russian distinction between Zapadniki, so Westernizers, those who want to westernize, to modernize Russia, but you can take exactly the same distinction to all other countries. And Slavophiles, one could call them sovereignists. What is important is autonomy, tradition, and distinctiveness. So this is, I think, this is crucial for you to understand peculiarity of Central Eastern Europe, that you will always encounter that type of division between elites who are seeking for capitals in the West, because this is where political and economic capital is coming from, or people who are looking for capitals in their local or in their nation, in their people. Several words. I don't want to present Central Eastern Europe as a unity. So this is based on also partial mind research on different so-called mnemonic regimes, how we reflect on the past. So on the one hand, you will see anti-communist consensus. So like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Croatia, and Kosovo, they will be closer in their thinking about the past to westernizers. Those countries like Macedonia, Albania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, Serbia, Moldova, they will be closer to sovereignists. They will be closer to looking at their past through the prism of their nations. And countries like Poland, Czech Republic, or Czechia now, Hungary, partially maybe Ukraine, although I think it's changing, they will have fractured and polarized mnemonic regimes. So on the one hand, we'll think about the past in an anti-communist way, but also and thus westernizing way, but also in a national or even nationalist way. And those mnemonic regimes will be also in tension. Probably there's nobody, I think, in that part of the world who is thinking about Russia as a savior, maybe with the exception of Transnistria. I could include here Belarus. But actually nobody is orienting themselves to in their memory regime to Russia. So now is the time to define what is conservatism in Central Eastern Europe. I gave the example of Bronisław Łagowski. He would be conservative in the first sense. He was a member of the Communist Party. He didn't want the change, the radical change, when we on political level, when the communist regime was shattered. So he represented what I would call functionalist perspective. So I'm conservative because I want to hold that reality that there is. And actually, Timothy Snyder, already in 1997, wrote an important article for us, who said that actually, post-communists are much more conservative than you are, because you are revolutionary, you want to change, but communists are really conservative. So Łagowski would be conservative in the first sense. He would be also conservative in the last sense. He saw that we have to introduce liberal reforms, free market reforms, and create a new elite that will have its capital. And one can also look at conservatism as the one that is serving the elites, the aristocracy of a given nation, be it bourgeoisie, be it intelligentsia, as in the Polish case. But at the same time, Łagowski would hate conservative parties, which for whom he would deem them as revolutionary. So you have three understandings of conservatism. My understanding is more Oxshotian, so existential. Conservatism is about appreciating what is here, and I will just elaborate it a little bit more on that. And let me come to Poland. This is a well-known cartoon. I'm glad that you are laughing, but this is a joke about us. I think that most of my colleagues know that, but we could do the same thing with Ukrainians and with Czechs, Slovaks, and so on. So we are in that place between Germany and Russia. What we can do about it, we can appreciate it because we cannot change it. We cannot change it, and also sense of humor is a part of what I see as conservatism. If you cannot change it, you can just accept it and smile, because then it distances you from the past. I wonder then why we are so Catholic seeing that cartoon. Why we are not critical of God's sense of humor, but still we are Catholic. Briefly about Polish exceptionalism. Poland was spared by 3 waves of secularization. So first of them was Enlightenment and absolutist secularization, so state-led secularization. Our Enlightenment was Christian, and we didn't have absolutist state that could destroy the church. Then we are spared by industrial secularization. Our workers' unions were also, for the most part, Christians. We are also spared by secularization that was pursued by Nazis and communists. In Poland, rather, there was a wave of desecularization during communist times. But it's only now that Poland is undergoing secularization. I was looking for how could I describe it, and the way I would describe it was digital secularization. That because of social media and internet, there is secularization in Poland. There's a memory of ancient political traditions. There's a vision that nobility, ancient nobility, was replaced by intelligentsia. So intelligentsia is the intellectual class is hegemonist in Poland, and there's still polarization within intelligentsia. So let me show you, for you to believe that this is the way. So here you can look here. We have 2 presidential candidates. This is liberal Trzaskowski. This is conservative Karol Nawrocki. There was a really big fight between them, but they both have PhD. So whoever is fighting in Poland, somebody with PhD will win. I'm a little bit exaggerating, but actually I want to show you that the hegemony of intelligentsia. This is Pope John Paul II, who embodied all those traits of Poland, but he was also a university professor. And it was a very important characteristic of his. He was also a poet. If you are not an intellectual in Poland, like or if you don't have PhD, like Polish President Donald Tusk, you are reading intellectual journals, and as you see, this is Carl Schmitt. So if you are a worker like Lech Wałęsa, you are surrounded by intellectuals like Karol Wojtyła. If you are also the leader of Solidarity movement, behind you there will be future Prime Minister of Republic of Poland, who was a editor of one of Polish intellectual journals. So when you look at the photos, you will always see, intellectuals in play and intelligentsia in play. This is Leszek Kołakowski. He was a fellow here at All Souls College, and this is Zygmunt Bauman from my faculty before 1968. They were also those intellectuals who were building Poland. And how you can draw some lessons from the Polish experience, some conservative lessons from Polish experience. You can draw lessons like George Weigel about Catholic resistance, and it was not only in Poland; it was also in Czechoslovakia as well. So the story of Central Eastern Europe would be the story of spiritual resistance. The other story would be the story of building civil society. yet another story, the most recent one, is the story of Europe's growth champion. You can draw any lesson you want from solidarity movement, because it was a Catholic movement, it was a national movement, it was a socialist movement, so you can draw any lesson you want. But I want to show that there are two people who quite recently drew lessons from Polish experience. Timothy Snyder and Rod Dreher. Timothy Snyder, probably he would associate himself more with liberal view, Dreher with conservative view. But when you look at them, actually the lessons are quite similar. They invoke power of the powerless. Leszek Kołakowski is the one with whom Timothy Snyder starts his book on tyranny. Tomislav Kolakowicz is the hero of Rod Dreher, but they both are fighting against, totalitarianism and looming totalitarianism and authoritarianism. They both call for resistance. They both call for freedom, courage, and not cooperation with lies. I would say the difference between them is that one is conservative and one draws conservative lessons, and the other draws liberal lessons. But these are the same lessons, and if I change their names, probably you would not recognize. So this is a typical case of mimetic rivalry, and that people on the opposite sides, they become actually quite similar. And the more similar we are, the more we fight to show that we are different. And let me give three conclusions. The way I'm looking now at some lessons that can be drawn from Central and Eastern Europe. So we can either be part of that polarization and draw either conservative or liberal lessons, or we can make one step further and draw what I would call second-order conservative lessons. So instead of being part of the polarization and polarity, we can look at that polarity from the distance and see what are the conditions of polarization of those societies and how can we overcome them. And this is what I think is actually the most precious lesson, that instead of being part of that polarization, and sometimes we have to be part of that polarization. I don't want to argue that we have to be always observing political struggle, but we can also understand what's going on in that struggle. And these are three concluding interpretations. So in order to leverage that polarization, we have to understand what's the meaning of system, what's the purpose of the system. So there has to be some overarching meaning. If we cannot find the purpose of the system, then we'll be always polarized, because we'll have nothing in common. It can be common country, it can be some kind of a goal, but we have to have it. So there has to be some kind of transcendence for the system. Then we have to think about how to make that system more anti-fragile. So how that system, instead of deconstruction, can be resilient. And last but not least, how can we build more harmony in that system? And this is how I understand my conservative vocation. On the one hand, I'm also engaging in those, let's say, sometimes political battles, but on the other hand, I step down from that fight to understand and to collaborate with people to make that system more harmonious, more anti-fragile, and also to find meaning in what we are doing. But I'm not the only one, and I just want to draw your attention to what's possible to do. This is Sanach. She is a great star in Poland. She gave 2 concerts and she filled our national stadium twice, day by day, with 60,000 young people, including 2 my young daughters. I was the hero for them, probably the best dad in the world at that time. And Sanach, she is singing what? She's singing Polish classical poetry. And my daughters were singing that poetry. And this is the first lesson about meaning. And imagine my daughter singing that song. This is by Miłosz. Whatever the anguish, there will be more anguish. The night is pitch dark, but it will get darker. Blessed are those who lived but left in time. Who is wise will be unhappy. And for the fool, happiness is the wage of sin. A star will rise and quickly pass away, and waiting empty years will rush by. What has fallen will wither in ruins. And I'm glad that you are smiling, because you see that when you are faced with dire reality, and when there's a song about that reality is not longer dire. That reality is not longer overwhelming. You are there, you are singing together with people, and the name of the song is actually song, and in Polish song is piosenka. It's kind of a light song. It's a light tune. So you can approach the dire reality in a light way, and it gives you, I think, the meaning. So you can, it's a deep meaning that you can survive the worst experience in your life with a song. So this is the first lesson, meaning. The second lesson, this is also very well-known image from Polish National Institute for Remembrance. It's the story, it's a video about Poland and our position. So you see that interface periphery between Russia and Germany, but you also see hope there. So let me comment it with a poem by Herbert. Cemeteries grow larger, the number of defenders smaller, yet the defense continues. It will continue to the end. And if the city falls, but a single man escapes, he will carry the city within himself on the roads of exile. He will be the city. So when you think that everything is over, there's still hope. So this is another lesson. And the last lesson is the lesson about division, about polarization. In the 80s, there was a song about our home that is divided. And that was the song about West Berlin. And it was written by one of Polish rock stars. But then some Polish singers understood that actually that the song about division is not about West Berlin, but it's actually about Poland here and now. And the song goes like that. My house is divided by a wall. The stairs divided by a wall. My street is divided by a wall. The right side shines with neon lights. The left side is completely dimmed. It's about Western and Eastern Berlin. You might feel it. The left side never wakes up. The right side never sleeps. I observe both sides from behind the curtain. My body is divided by a wall. 10 fingers to the left side, another 10 to the right side, an equal part of the head on each side. And when one of the singers sang the song, she could not sing it further, and then the whole stadium was singing with her. So they were singing that our house is divided. There's a wall that is going through us. It's not only that it's crushing us, but it's going through us. And there, in that moment when people were singing that, they were also overcoming that polarization. There was that longing for unity. And briefly, what kind of lessons we can take beyond that polarization is that you can find meaning in wasteland, there's resurrection in ruins, and there's solidarity in fracture. And you can translate it into theological language that meaning is faith, resurrection is hope, and solidarity is charity. And I hope it's not only Central Eastern European lesson, but also you know that lesson as well. Thanks so much.
Michał, thank you very, very much for that very rich it's more than a tour of the kind of Polish cultural landscape in Central Eastern Europe, but you've opened up something to us of its heart, of its spirit, and it's very valuable. So you started with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and I wonder if I can just come back to there and just open up the conversation. So one of, from the UK context, and I think you find this in other English-speaking countries, the question of how citizens identify themselves as, are they asserting a strong sense of national identity with historic continuity, or is there a qualification of that with more international orders and forms of loyalty? That is absolutely at the fulcrum of many of our politics. And just if many of us here, I take it most of us here are residents in Oxford, if you get to the outskirts you'll find St George's flags flying halfway up the flagpoles, and that's expressive of this political fissure that runs through. So just thinking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and there's different responses that publics could take to that in Central and Eastern Europe,
yeah.
where clearly the prospects of future Russian aggression are much more salient than perhaps they're felt by the British public here. And there are different responses to that. One would be a reassertion of the national sense of independence, that picture you displayed of the Polish soldier between the Soviet Union emblem and the Nazi emblem. And another would be seeking protection in the context of a wider collective, whether that's NATO and whether it's the European Union as the basis for rearmament. Could you just talk to how what the impacts are, what the fissures are across Central and Eastern Europe as a consequence of that?
Yeah, so I sense that there might be also some Ukrainians here, but my sense is that in Ukraine you have both reactions. So on the one hand there is reassertion of national identity, but on the other hand there is that belief, faith actually in the support of international entities, and NATO would be the most important, and also the European Union would be the most important ones. So I was struck how Ukrainians combine their being nationalists with their being extremely pro-European. I have never encountered any pro-European country like that. So that would be the first. That would be my comment on Ukraine. There are also some important tensions with regard to response to Ukraine and to war in Ukraine, against Ukraine, among Central Eastern European countries. I called my friend when Polish Prime Minister with the Czech Prime Minister, with the Prime Minister of Slovenia. I called my Slovak friend and I told him, well, this is wonderful because our Prime Ministers are now on their train to Kiev to show that they support Ukrainian independence. And he was shocked because he couldn't believe that a Slovak Prime Minister could be on the train, and he was not. It was a Slovenian Prime Minister. But that initial reaction, I would say it's bodily reaction of our politicians who sense reality, was very, very pertinent to understand. So Poland was immediately pro-Ukrainian because we knew that we are next in line. The same with Baltic states. This is what Lech Kaczynski, during the attempted invasion of Georgia, said when he came there. He said first Ukraine, first Georgia, then Ukraine, then Baltic states, then Poland. So we knew that actually we are also fighting for our freedom. With Slovakia, especially now under Fico, that would be, I would say, much more cautious with regard to supporting Ukraine, just like Orban's Hungary. When I asked my friend, why is that? He said, well, for us it's unthinkable. We are a small state. It's unthinkable to take your sword and to attack Russia. So he said, well, we are two small states. There are also Hungarians here. But if I were to give a speculative hypothesis, what would be the following: that you can have an imperial gaze while looking at Central Eastern Europe, and then you see only Russia as an entity that you have to take into consideration. So only Russia is important. So you have to somehow accommodate to that situation. And when you think about Slovakia and now Hungary, they are part of what used to be Austro-Hungarian Empire. And this is a speculative hypothesis, but they somehow, I think, they look at Russia as a former empire, while Poland, Baltic states, they were part of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, so they can imagine that there can be something else than Russia in that place. So there can be some kind of a political, entity. Personally, I was shocked actually at the swift reaction of the British. And also Boris Johnson is one of, I know that he's not a hero in the Great Britain, but he's a hero in Ukraine. That his reaction was very swift, unlike German reaction that also shocked me. Maybe you don't remember that, but Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki came to the Brandenburg, to Berlin, and he said that it's a joke that you want to send 400 helmets, and they were not even a military helmets. So that was the first German reaction. Yeah? And when I was coming to Great Britain, I saw that actually Ukrainian refugees are welcome, you know, from the very start. So I felt actually closer connection to the Great Britain than to my friends from Germany.
And last question for me, and then I'll open it up to wider contributions. One of the themes of your talk was in particular, the role of the Catholic Church as part of the Polish cultural heritage and as a site for spiritual resistance, and I think also political resistance during the Cold War period against the communist regime. But a fourth wave of secularization which is taking place in Polish society. So a kind of first part to the question, are theological commitments essentially identified? Are they politically coded now in the Polish and wider European context, or is actually more variability in that? And then related to that again, going back to Russia's invasion of Ukraine post-2022, one of the features of Russian domestic politics is the co-optation of the Russian Orthodox Church by the Putin regime. So that there's public advocacy for, as they call it, special military operation, and as it were, a bestowal of blessing, theological blessing on this invasion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how does that play into religious commitment in relation to conservatism?
Yeah. So when we look at Ukrainian Poles, when we look at the Russian Orthodox Church, we see it as a part of the state. We even, in one of my journals, we translated even Cyril's homilies about what we called, preaching at the time of special operation. And it's outrageous when you see how actually religious faith is used to legitimize violence. So for me, from my point of view, this is religion became a part of the political. So it is in service of the political. It is the service of political violence. With regard to Poland, once I asked one of the leaders of the Liberal Party when the polarization between you liberals and conservatives began. He said, well, after the death of John Paul II. So John Paul II was the one who could leverage that polarization in Poland. He was the king, also using a metaphor, he was the king of Poland. And now, Polish Catholic Church, I would say, I think similarly when you think about the situation in the US, I would say that religion now for us lies more in politics than in religion per se. And now Polish Catholic Church is also getting polarized. So you can define, conservative branch, you can define liberal branch, but they are not. They cannot leverage that polarity. They become part of that polarity. And of course, with the younger generation that has left the church, we are now the place of probably the most the quickest and rapid secularizing process in the world right now. When I'm looking at my students and the younger generation, so they are leaving the church in hundreds, and the church is losing its also political power. And I know it. By speaking with politicians, I know that the Catholic Church is not treated as, let's say, important political party. So that would be my answer.
Great, thank you. So who'd like to open us up, invite questions and comments? So, Jacob, please. And if you just wait for the microphone, so that those online can hear the question as well.
Thank you. So I think among many very rich themes, you touched on one of, if perhaps the central question about conservatism when you mentioned the tension between the functionalist and the political perspective. So I'm going to leave aside the class perspective. I think that's something opponents of conservatism project onto it rather than something conservatives themselves say they're doing. And I wonder if you could just say a little more about how they might be unified at the level of abstraction, I suppose, because when you talk about the conservative lessons in Central Eastern Europe and the transcendence, anti-fragility and trust, this seems to perhaps suggest a way that both of those perspectives could be unified, the anti-fragility and trust perhaps relating to a functional perspective and the meaning and transcendence perhaps relating to a more substantive set of political goals. I wonder if you could speak to that. Is that an interpretation that makes sense to you? And how, if at all, can these perspectives be reconciled?
Well, it's wonderful. I haven't thought about it, that you can use those types and to actually present your own theory of conservatism. So I would commend you on writing something about those visions of conservatism. I actually, you dismissed the third one, and it's my favorite one because it's a sociological one. So the way I'm looking at now specifically Polish conservatism is that Polish conservatism paradoxically is very democratic. It's mobilizing masses because it is connected with masses who are Catholic. It's connected with solidarity. So it had that mobilizing fervor, that revolutionary fervor, the fervor of anti-fragility, trust, transcendence, that is embodied actually by solidarity movement. And solidarity movement was not conservative in the first and the second vision, but in the third vision. So my definition of conservatism is a socialism with a divine face. So you are mobilizing people for the good cause, people who are not the elites, but you show them the transcendent dimension. So that would be my vision.
I must say, as someone who's professionally committed to the value of doctorates, I was somewhat envious about the idea that whoever wins the election, they will have a PhD.
Or a professor. Yeah? I'm exaggerating, but former President of Poland, Lech Kaczyński, was a professor. Leaders of our parties are PhDs. Yeah, so this is because the importance of intellectual capital in lieu of lack of political capital and economic capital. Then cultural capital is the most important one, and hence intellectual capital.
Yeah, but I wonder. It's a great question, Jacob. But I wonder if so at the level of abstraction, as it were, there's got to be an articulated position. But part of the job of political parties is to reconcile or provide a space in which there's organisational unity for divergent perspectives which are otherwise competing in a successful party will allow one to come to the fore at one point and another to come to the
So
fore.
one element also when we are mentioning politics in Poland, so the conservative, let's say, coming back to power or conservative realignment was possible because of that mobilizing factor combined with intellectual factor, because one could say up to 2015, these were like two separate groups. On the one hand, intellectuals. On the other hand, people who were representing solidarity movement masses. So that realignment was the most important one.
Great. Others. Time. Let's take two more questions and then we'll close. Yes, please, at the front.
Thank you. Michał, thank you very much indeed. I found it very interesting. One part of your talk was about Polish exceptionalism. I was rather intrigued by that, and especially with the term exceptionalism. From my understanding, didn't quite understand what was particularly exceptionalism in the case of Poland.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you had that. I'm raising this question because I was first introduced with this concept of exceptionalism when President Obama raised it in the context of American exceptionalism. Yes. Okay, from what he was saying, this is, we are American system, American people, perhaps. We are over and above other people. Okay, you had that, if you like, ingredient of being rather superior to other people amongst us. And a few years after that, we had Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
And I cannot bring myself to understand what is exceptionalism about Americans when we actually see what the American society is going through. Sorry, I'm ranting a little bit, but we can actually see the exceptionalism in the way that you've described it with your 4 bullet points about the Czechs, about the Slovaks, about the Romanians, about the Bulgarians, etc. That they can actually draw on their own characteristics, their own national historic characteristics, to come up with the exceptionalism of those countries. Therefore, I'm rather intrigued that why you've actually chose the term exceptionalism. Yeah. And if I may ask Tom, if you'll be gracious enough to come back to me at the very end, because I've got a question from you to ask. Thank you.
Oh, wow. It's a complex situation, a question from you to ask. It's wonderful that you decipher me well, because I took it actually from Seymour Martin Lipset and his book American Exceptionalism, and so it resonated with me. It was double-edged sword, so it resonated with me. There's also kind of connection between Poland and America with regard to the memory of the Republic, and once Polish Republic, Polish Commonwealth died, the new was born in the U.S. So there's that connection. Also, Polish fighters for freedom left Poland, and they also fought for American freedom. So there's that connection, and you are right to decipher that. I would say my understanding is that there are several elements. One of them is importance of cultural capital. The other is the importance of religion, although it's waning. With regard to superiority, I think that in every nation there is that notion that we are superior, although sometimes we do not acknowledge that. We are superior to, say, within our country, to those other people whom we don't like. So there's always that thought, and I would say it's nothing wrong about it when we think that we are exceptional, but at the same time, it has to be paired with thinking, we have to serve others. We are just like others. And in Poland, what was important, and it is also important for me, together with exceptionalism, there's also the slogan for your and our freedom. So when the first Maidan broke out, I was in the Institute for Human Sciences in Vienna with Timothy, and I left my pregnant wife just to go to Kiev with my 2 friends, and I felt, well, this is the Polish moment, and everybody was freaking out. What are you doing? You are leaving your family and you are going just to a different country. So I would say that we have to pair those 2 elements. On the one hand, exceptionalism. On the other hand, serving other people, and also having connections with other people, also within our country.
Great, thank you. So just a last question. This is from someone online. Is true reconciliation and forgiveness possible on a societal level, or is collective amnesia the only thing we can ever truly achieve?
Oh, wow. It's good that it's the last question, because it could spiral out into philosophy and theology. Actually,
it's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. The question of forgiveness, I think it's one of the most important ones. I would love, actually, this to be a conservative lesson. When I posted bullet points of my talk to Facebook, my liberal friends said, well, but why hope, faith, and charity are conservative? We want them. These are our values. And I think well, this is good, because we know what to do, because then we can do it together. There's a transcendent goal we can together pursue, although we might approach it through different lenses. But also, I think that the question of forgiveness is the question of affection, is the question of closeness, is the question of intimacy. And I think that we lack that virtue of forgiveness in the West. You lack it in the West. We lack it very much so in Central Eastern Europe. I was personally interested in the question of forgiveness. We wrote a little booklet on solidarity that finished with the question of forgiveness. And a great British theologian, James Allison, he introduced the notion of intelligence of the victim. So if you are a victim, you have intelligence because you understand that suffering, also your suffering, but your intelligence also is seen through your forgiveness. So you can be a bitter victim, but if you forgive, you become an agentic, you become an agent, you become a subject of your own life. So you can then define your, you can define your identity, you can define your dignity, not at the cost of somebody else. We don't have to build our moral capital by showing, you know, I'm better than you are. You're liberal, you're conservative, you're somebody from the other. But because I forgive, because of who I am, I can build my own identity. In Central Eastern Europe, a very important question was the question about forgiveness and justice. Because justice, the perpetrators were not put to justice. I interviewed people who lost their fathers, their colleagues during the martial law. And those people were not, the murderers were not brought to justice. Or if they were, it took 20 years to do it. So they didn't have that immediate, that immediate sense of justice. But still, they forgave some of them. And I would be glad to share that booklet with you if you want. Some of them did forgive. I remember specifically one girl who lost her father in the coal mine in the southern Poland because he was killed by the communists during the martial law. And she said, I forgave them because now I can feel better, I can sleep. Now I'm blessed, I have a blessing of God. And what they will do with my forgiveness, it is not my business. And I saw how she built her identity, not through mediation of somebody else. For me, it's a fake identity if I define myself through mediation of somebody else. But she defined her identity through her free act, but also with the reference to the transcendent, to God. So I think that for our societies, forgiveness is the right way we have to pursue, and not forgiveness, not distant forgiveness, but forgiveness, in the faculty, in our family, in our nation, that intimate forgiveness. And I would not like to live in the word of amnesia.
Yeah, great. Just for reasons of time, I'll pull us to a close, and then let me come back to you just privately, if I may, afterwards. But Michał, conservatives, so often the tone of conservative contribution to public discourse is lament and pessimism. Whatever the anguish, there will be more anguish. But actually, you've given us a really hopeful vision, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So can I just invite you all to say thank you very, very much indeed.